We've all encountered Occam's razor at some point. The idea that the simplest explanation is usually the right one. It feels intuitive and often works well. But let's pause for a moment. When it comes to complex systems, Occam's razor might actually lead us astray. In fact, it can push us toward oversimplifications that obscure more than they clarify. Let's dig into why that happens. To start, let's remind ourselves what Occam's razor actually says. Don't multiply entities beyond necessity. In simpler terms, when we're faced with multiple explanations, we should go with the one that assumes the least. And in straightforward situations, this principle shines. Consider a common issue. Your light bulb stops working. The simplest answer? The bulb is dead, not that the wiring in your house has failed. But when we shift from simple systems to complex ones, filled with hidden interdependencies and unpredictable interactions, Occam's razor can start to falter. And this isn't a small problem. Sometimes it pushes us toward conclusions that are far too reductive to capture the reality we're dealing with. Why does that happen? In complex systems, simplicity often deceives. These systems have multiple variables influencing each other in ways that aren't immediately obvious. Feedback loops, emergent properties, and non-linear cause and effect chains don't fit neatly into simple explanations. Let's look at an example from history. For centuries, we clung to the geocentric model, the Earth at the center of the universe. It was the simpler explanation. After all, the sun and stars appeared to revolve around us. But then came retrograde motion, the planets behaving in ways that couldn't be explained by a simple model. To account for these inconsistencies, astronomers had to add a complicated web of epicycles. It was the heliocentric model that untangled the mess. Yes, it was more complex at first glance, but it provided a natural explanation without needing constant adjustment. The lesson? Reality sometimes demands complexity, even when simplicity is appealing. Now take medicine. Imagine a patient with fatigue, joint pain, and rashes. The obvious diagnosis? Chronic fatigue syndrome. But what if the real issue is more complicated? A combination of autoimmune disorder and a food allergy? More complex, yes, but also more accurate. Here, Occam's razor would have favored the simpler diagnosis, potentially leaving the patient misdiagnosed or untreated. In medicine, the truth often lies in the complexity. Now let's talk about one of the most complex systems of all, consciousness. No one fully understands it, but most neuroscientists agree that it's an emergent property of the brain's intricate network. It doesn't come from one part of the brain. It emerges from billions of neurons interacting in highly complex ways. If we applied Occam's razor too rigidly, we might reduce consciousness to just brain activity. But that would be a misstep. Emergent phenomena, by their very nature, resist such simplifications. The whole really is greater than the sum of its parts. As we dig deeper into consciousness, we see that complexity isn't a flaw in our understanding. It's a fundamental aspect of it. This isn't just true for the brain. It applies to ecosystems, social networks, and global economies. When we're dealing with systems composed of many interacting parts, complexity isn't something to avoid. It's something to embrace. So, where does this leave us with Occam's razor? In complex systems, it can sometimes lead us in the wrong direction. We want simplicity to hold the answer, but reality is often much more nuanced. Whether we're diagnosing a patient, grappling with consciousness, or trying to understand the universe, complex systems demand complex answers. Occam's razor still has its place, especially in well-defined systems with limited variables and clear relationships. But in fields with emergent properties, nonlinear dynamics, or multiple interacting causes, like medicine, neuroscience, or economics, oversimplification can be dangerous. In the end, Occam's razor is a valuable tool, but it's not a universal law. When we confront complex problems, we need to engage with that complexity, even when a simpler solution seems tempting. The real insights are usually found in the details. So the next time you're facing a complex issue, remember, sometimes the simplest answer isn't just wrong, it's misleading.